The cafe was packed, a symphony of clattering dishes, murmured conversations, and the hiss of the espresso machine filling every corner. Rain streaked down the windows, blurring the bustling city outside into watercolor smudges of gray and gold. She was sitting alone at a corner table, shoulders hunched over her laptop, her coffee growing cold, a stack of bills peeking out from her tote bag. Life had been relentless lately, and every day felt like a battle she was barely equipped to fight. Then he appeared, a man in plain clothes, his face partially hidden under the hood of a worn jacket, eyes tired but steady, carrying nothing but a small backpack and a quiet air of weariness. She hesitated for only a second before gesturing to the empty chair across from her. She had no idea that by letting him sit, she was about to change both of their lives forever. If you believe in kindness and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Diaries. He smiled faintly, a quiet gratitude in his eyes, and slid into the seat opposite her. His hands were rough, calloused from years of work, and his clothes, though simple, had an understated quality that hinted at a life more complicated than it appeared. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he just exhaled, relieved to finally have a moment of peace. She returned to her laptop, pretending not to notice him, but there was a subtle awareness in the way she watched the door, half expecting someone else to arrive, someone more important. But she didn't. She only had this moment, shared quietly with a stranger. He was a single father, a man who had built an empire from nothing, only to lose nearly everything when his wife left, taking their young daughter with her. The wealth, the titles, the boardrooms, all of it meant little compared to the silent nights when he couldn't reach his little girl, when her laughter and warmth became a memory rather than a reality. Today, he was just another man in a crowded cafe, hiding from the expectations of the world, craving a simple connection, a place to rest without judgment. She noticed him then, really noticed him, the subtle exhaustion in his eyes, the way he cradled his coffee cup like a lifeline, the small scars on his knuckles that hinted at battles no one could see. And something inside her stirred, a mixture of empathy and curiosity, a recognition of struggle she knew too well. She didn't know he was a millionaire, that he had wealth most people could only dream of, that behind the ordinary jacket and the quiet demeanor lay a life full of pressures, power, and impossible choices. She only saw a man who seemed lonely, who seemed human in a world that often demanded perfection. As the minutes passed, their silent companionship became oddly comforting. She laughed softly at a video on her laptop, he chuckled quietly, surprising both of them with the sound, warm and genuine. Conversation started cautiously, words slipping into the gaps where silence had settled. He shared stories in fragments, small tales of city life, of fleeting moments with his daughter, of little triumphs that no one would notice but him. She spoke of her own struggles, of the debt that loomed over her apartment, of nights spent worrying if she could make rent, of the loneliness that seemed impossible to shake. The connection was immediate, human, and painfully real. But the world has a way of pressing reality back into even the most fragile moments of peace. A sudden phone call from his assistant reminded him of meetings, investments, and obligations. The veil of anonymity he had carefully maintained began to feel suffocating. And yet, in that fleeting half-hour, he had felt something he hadn't in years, uncomplicated kindness, genuine care from someone who didn't know his name or his status, someone who didn't treat him as untouchable or untouchably wealthy. She, too, felt the strange pull of something beyond ordinary friendliness. It was rare, in a life so full of struggle, to meet someone who seemed to understand, someone whose presence was soft but grounding, whose kindness wasn't conditional on anything she could offer in return. She didn't realize that for him, it had been years since anyone had looked at him simply as a man, as a human being, rather than a figure of wealth or influence. Over the next few weeks, their meetings became routine. He would show up at her cafe, always careful to remain understated, always careful not to reveal the world he carried with him. And she would always find a seat for him, always offer him a smile, always ask about his day, as if the universe had aligned to give them a brief, perfect pause from life's chaos. Through their small moments together, both began to heal in ways they hadn't anticipated. The walls they had built around their hearts began to soften, the burdens of their pasts feeling lighter when shared, even in the quietest of words. One rainy afternoon, she noticed something, the glint of a luxury watch beneath his sleeve, the way he carried himself even when pretending to be ordinary. Curiosity tugged at her, and eventually, the truth came out, hesitatingly, in a conversation over steaming cups of coffee. He wasn't just any man, he was a millionaire, a single father who had given everything for his child, who had disguised himself in the simplicity of anonymity to find the human connection he so desperately needed. Her initial shock melted into something deeper, a mixture of awe, empathy, and the strange intimacy that comes from seeing the truth behind a mask. The revelation could have changed everything, and yet, in the cafe, it changed nothing. She realized that for him, it was never about wealth, and for her, it was never about status. They had met, connected, and understood each other purely as people, untainted by the external definitions that society often imposes. And in that realization, something extraordinary happened. They both began to believe in kindness and second chances again. Months passed, and life's hardships didn't disappear, but they no longer had to face them alone. She found ways to manage her bills with newfound hope, driven not by money but by the support of someone who truly saw her. He found moments of joy that wealth alone could never buy, a shared laugh, a quiet conversation, a hand held across a cafe table, a smile that spoke volumes. And somewhere along the way, they became each other's anchor, finding peace not in grand gestures but in ordinary moments filled with genuine connection. Before the story closes, I want to ask you, if this story touched your heart, leave a comment and share your thoughts. Tell us about a moment when kindness changed your life, because your story matters too. And as the rain drizzled against the cafe windows one last time, they sat together, content in the quiet knowledge that life could be harsh, unpredictable, and unforgiving, but sometimes, just sometimes, it offered moments of beauty, of hope, and of second chances. And all it took was a simple gesture, letting someone sit at your table. If this story moved you, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Diaries, because every act of kindness deserves to be celebrated.